Hello everyone, and welcome to the second installation in our summer video series. I'm Lincoln Preston and this is Douglas Child. Just kidding. I'm Lincoln Child and this is Douglas Preston, and we're delighted to be here with you again. In this particular segment, we're going to address some of the more serious questions that our readers have about the business of publishing, how you get published, what the actual process is like, how we personally were first published, and how various elements such as marketing and reviews affect us personally. The first question we often get asked is, how did you first get published? And Doug has a just imperishable version of that, which I'm going to ask him to account for us.
Well, actually, I first got published thanks to Lincoln Child. I was working at the Museum of Natural History, writing a column for Natural History magazine. I got a call from a fellow who identified himself as a senior editor at St. Martin's Press, and would I care to lunch with him at the Russian Tea Room to discuss writing a book about the museum. So I immediately rushed down to the Salvation Army and bought myself a jacket so I could get into the Russian Tea Room, and showed up expecting some very distinguished gray-haired editor, and instead there's this kid younger than I was waving at me from one of the tables in the back of the restaurant where he'd been seated because he didn't look important. Sorry, Link.
It's true,
but
back then.
We had a great lunch, and that resulted in a book, my first book, called Dinosaurs in the Attic, which was a nonfiction book about the Museum of Natural History, which Lincoln edited. When that book was published, Lincoln made an outrageous demand. He said that he wanted to see all these behind-the-scenes areas of the museum where, you know, that I'd written about, like the whale eyeball storage room, the rats. I mean, they have like 30,000 rats in jars of alcohol. He wanted to see the dinosaur bone storage room and all these things. So I devised a tour at midnight because these areas were normally off limits. I couldn't show them around during the day because they didn't have the authority. So we took them around at midnight, and we ended up at 2 o'clock in the morning in one of the dinosaur halls. And Lincoln turned to me and he said, "Oh my God," he said, "this is the scariest damn building in the world. We have got to write a thriller set in this building." And that became The Relic.
The second question we're frequently asked is, how do book reviews affect you? We've grown inured to them over the years, and in fact, bad reviews. Of course, we love good reviews. In fact, on our website, we actually have a section called the Rogues Gallery, where we take particularly misguided or nasty reviews, and we roast them, in a sense, by adding our own, we think, droll and amusing comments and rejoinders to them. Sometimes, though, it's hard to take a Olympian distance to the reviews. For example, on a personal note, my latest solo book, Terminal Freeze, got more negative reviews on Amazon than I ever expected to see, and it was hard not to take them personally and hard not to leap in and sort of, hey, take a huge fly swatter and, with a literary slap, respond to all of them. But I managed to keep my distance and keep my silence. And sales and ultimately reader input has proven that to be just a blip on the radar screen. In the case of the Pendergast books, we have such overwhelming reader acclaim that the kind of criticisms we get are just personal preferences, like why is Viola masculine in the book, or why isn't Viola masculine in the book, and things of that nature. The next question, which I'll ask Doug to answer, is the Pendergast series is up to 10 books. How do you keep momentum up to keep writing new books in this series?
Well, we love our characters. I think that's the answer. We just are interested in their lives. I mean, Lincoln is maybe too interested in some of our female characters' lives, but we just love our characters. They sort of keep us going, especially Pendergast. I can't say we love Pendergast. He's he's a chilly sort of character. I'm not sure I'd want to bring him home to have for dinner with my wife and children, but he just keeps us going. He's always doing something strange off camera, so to speak, and we have to kind of chase around after him and get him into the next book. So far he's still a very fresh character for us, and we will continue to write books about him as long as he continues to be a very lively and fresh character.
The next question is, how long does the process take from when you first finish the manuscript? Well, I think I'll answer that by going back a little bit earlier than that. What usually happens is Doug or I talk about a set of chapters, And let's just say, for example, it's chapters that Doug has to write. And I'll get this set of very sort of amateurish and fragmented, ramblings, which I then am forced to polish under great force with enormous wit and tact and judgment.
It's
and then, of course, he takes that to heart, and he can't stand it, and he rips it apart. And then, of course, that upsets me, so I put it back together again. And this goes on until our editor finally yanks it out of our hands. Now, of course, if Doug would, I'm sure, beg to differ with that, but I'm answering this question, so shut up. Then what happens is the manuscript goes to our fabulous editor, Jamie, who reads it and writes us an editorial letter, which has a few things, maybe half a dozen things that we didn't realize. Like a character is called Joe in chapter 5 and it's called Joyce in chapter 10, and it's a bit of a problem. Once we fix her editorial comments, it gets proofread, then it goes through a various series of printing steps, pages, bound pages, ARCs, which are reading copies for bookstores and critics, and ultimately it gets published. And that whole process, believe it or not, takes up to a year from when the book is submitted. Ideally, publishers like to get the book submitted a year in advance. So as writers, we have to be very careful to pick a topic that's still topical a year from now and somebody else hasn't ripped off from us. Okay, the final question, which I'll give to Doug, is how much input do you get on things like marketing or cover art?
Well, we get quite a bit of input. In fact, actually that varies from publisher to publisher, but our publisher, Grand Central, is really great about that. They consult us very closely on the cover art. They send us early proofs, and it's not a pro forma thing. If we don't like the cover art, they definitely take that to heart. They take it back, they revise it, and it's very much a collaborative process. As far as marketing goes, neither Lincoln nor I are marketing geniuses, so we leave that up to our publisher. They put together a marketing plan, and it's generally these have been terrific. In fact, just the other day I got an email from my daughter that had a picture of her on the New York City subway, and there's a fantastic ad for Fever Dream right on the subway. I couldn't believe it. Fantastic. I didn't know people who took the subway knew how to read. But anyway, and then the most important part of the marketing plan, though, is up to us. After the books reach the bookstores, both our mothers go out, and they go into the bookstores and they demand the books, and they put them, when the bookstore manager's back is turned, at least my mother takes the books from the back of the store and puts them in the window. And she goes back in again and again buying books and wondering why the book is so poorly displayed. Never, of course, revealing that she's my mother. And I think Lincoln's mother does the same thing.
Yes, they go across the country, canvassing, and it takes it's a very long and tedious process. It takes about 4 or 5 months, but we really love our mothers for doing that. Thank you, Mom. Love you very much. And thank you, our readers. We love you too, and we appreciate your listening and watching. And tune in next time, and we're going to take questions from our bulletin board. Bye for now.